مرحبا بكم جميعا وحياكم الله في هذه الورشة التفاعلية. سعداء جدا بمشاركتكم في برنامجنا التدريبي الذي ننظمه في هيئة أبو ظبي للطفولة المبكرة بالتعاون مع شركائنا. نسعى في هيئة أبو ظبي للطفولة المبكرة إلى دعم مسيرة التنمية الشاملة للأطفال وتعزيز رفاهيتهم منذ فترة الحمل وحتى سن الثامنة، وضمان نموهم في بيئة داعمة وآمنة وتعزز وصولهم لموارد وأدوات إبداعية ومبتكرة، وحصولهم على خدمات متكاملة وذات جودة عالية تساهم في تطوير مهاراتهم وتحسين قدراتهم. لذلك نحن حريصين على تمكين شركائنا وتعزيز قدراتهم لدعم التنمية الشاملة للطفل. هذا البرنامج تم تصميمه خصيصا للعاملين في قطاع التعليم المبكر والحضانات بهدف إثراء خبراتكم وتنمية مهاراتكم في مجالات الطفولة المبكرة وصولا لتحسين جودة التعليم وتحقيق رفاهية أحبتنا الأطفال من خلال التركيز على 4 مجالات رئيسية هي الصحة والتغذية، حماية الطفل، الدعم الأسري، إلى جانب الرعاية والتعليم المبكرين. نتمنى لكم مشاركة ممتعة ومفيدة ومداخلات ثرية وقيمة، ونتطلع للالتقاء بكم مجددا في برامجنا المستقبلية. نشكركم مرة أخرى على حضوركم ومشاركتكم، ونثمن لكم جهودكم في تنمية ورعاية أحبتنا الأطفال.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at today's session. Today, we will be covering supporting children with transition back to education and well-being in early years. Our trainer today is Shamila, and really excited to get this session started. Good morning, Shamila. You're on mute.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, just saying Ramadan Kareem to everyone. We hope you're all good this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll get started, yeah? Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks. So you've been just a quick reminder that we've all been put onto mute, and just to ensure that there's no interference or background noise while the presentation's taking place, and also to ensure that you've got a clearer listening experience. There is the chat function. Please do ask questions. I know there's a few questions coming in there with reference to the certificates. I'm sure Rafi will get to that at the end of the session. Anything to do with the session, any questions, do put them in there, and I'll attempt to answer them at the end. And if I don't get to them, I'll be sure to answer them, and then we can put them onto the common questions onto the forum. Also, just a reminder that the sessions will be recorded and will be available to watch in English, Arabic, and I think subtitled in Hindi as well. So they will be coming up very soon too. So you'll be able to access them to share them with your teams as well. Let's have a, oops, change my, here we go. So I just want to introduce myself. I think you all know my name is Shamila. I've been in Dubai for just over 20 years, in early years again, just over 20 years. I'm working as a nursery manager here in Dubai. And really, yeah, been doing a few sessions with you guys now, and I really enjoyed it. So this one is on transition into the early years setting and back into education, and how to support children's well-being within that process. So I think I'd just like to go through the learning outcomes to begin with. What we do aim to do at the end of the session is to be able to develop an understanding of emotional intelligence, understand how to support young children's well-being, learn how to create an emotionally safe nursery environment for children when they do come back into the setting, and be able to use practical strategies to support a smooth transition back into nurseries for children and their families. And we'll just talk about those briefly at the end as well. We all know that we have certain aspirations for the children that do come to our settings. We want them to be able to get along with each other, be compassionate, be kind, be able to solve problems peacefully, feel secure and calm within their environment, and always be alert and engaged. This actually just add up to the well-being of each child. So it's something that we are aiming towards as early years educators. And I think what we'll cover today would be identifying the key to make the right connections for this outcome, we're going to be explaining emotional intelligence in comparison to intellectual intelligence. How can we support emotional well-being and the emotional impact we have on children through our communications, and again, how to create an emotionally safe environment for the children in our setting. I think when children have come back after pandemic and tried to come back into education and early years settings and nurseries, there is, we can say, there's an elephant in the room. So to say, it refers to obvious problems or difficult situations that people do not really want to talk about, or meaning, there's a bigger issue that we're all aware of, but for some reason, something that we're not discussing as often as maybe we need to. And these are some of the words that come to mind when looking at the situations children and staff are having to deal with when coming back into earlier settings after the global pandemic that we're all facing at the moment. I think we do need to remember and keep at the back of our minds that we might not all be in the same boat, but we're all actually in the same storm. It is a global situation, although we might look at things as a more smaller scale situation or difficulty that we might be going through. It is actually global, so everyone around the world is going through the same situation in some way or in some form. I think the acknowledgement to that will support us in catering to each child's well-being within our setting. I think we need to remember also to be kind to ourselves and to others. We don't know what situation the parents are going through, what things they've had to face during this difficult time. And I think it's important to understand that being kind to each other and to ourselves is important for us to maintain our well-being. And also remember to leave, and this is a big one, to leave our issues at the door before we enter our setting, so we're not bringing in those negative feelings or those apprehensions into the setting where it may be affecting directly our colleagues and the children around us. We want to lead by example. So I think it's very important to leave those situations at the door before we enter the setting. And we need to always remember that we are the guardians of each child under our care. So we are the guardianships of childhood within our centres, within our nurseries. So we need to be responsible for our actions. We need to be aware of how we face certain situations, how we present ourselves within the settings in front of those children, to be able to create a safe environment for them. I think it's important to understand what we mean by well-being and where do we begin. So well-being is basically the experience of health, happiness and prosperity. I think it includes having good mental health, high life satisfaction, a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, and basically the ability to manage stress or difficult situations that might come our way. And this is what we want to teach children. We want to teach them to be able to cater for their well-being, to be able to manage difficult situations, and to basically have a feeling of feeling well within ourselves and within themselves as young individuals. It includes so many positive things, such as feeling happy, healthy, socially connected, and with life, going through life with a purpose. So this is our moral aim. We do aim to create a secure environment for each child where they are feeling a sense of well-being within their environment. And I think that leads me on to my next thing, is how we need to create and how important it is to create an emotionally safe environment for each and every child within our setting. An emotional environment is one that provides emotional well-being. It provides stability for children according to their individual needs. A good emotional environment will provide children with a calm setting and atmosphere, most importantly, with adults who will provide them with emotional support. So that our role is very important here. We might provide them with a safe environment, a physical environment, but I think it's important for our role to kick into, so we're actually part of that emotional support, where we understand their feelings and we show them empathy, and we model those feelings of support and empathy, so they learn the correct way of how to deal with their emotions and their distresses. We want children to have a feel-good factor. We want them to feel positive about the situation around them. We want them to be able to deal with any adversities in a positive way. So the emotional environment can also be seen as an invisible measure of feelings. The more calmer and the more safer the environment for the child, the more emotionally safe the child will feel. The factors that we can look at when looking at the emotional safe environment is supportive and engaging adults, the noise levels within the classroom, maybe the color scheme, having calmer colors, pastel colors will also always create a calmer environment in opposition to having bright, busy classrooms that might actually create too much activity in the brain and a lot of distress within children as well. And the organization of the room is very important. How is it broken up? Is it an open space where children can run? Is it small spaces where children can find themselves busy in certain areas? What kind of resources are available? Do they cater to the child's imagination, or are they fixed and repetitive resources that can actually cause maybe boredom or repeated activities within children's day setting? I think also it's important to imagine the feelings you'd like your child to come away with after their first day being at nursery. I think that's a good way to imagine and maybe to sort out what you need your environment to provide. And then also, what kind of feelings do you want the child to take away at the end of the day? What will make them want to come back to the setting? And I think what we need to understand is that we need to get to know each child as an individual, especially if it's their first day. What are their likes, their dislikes? What can we do to make them feel safe, to make them feel secure and confident and happy in the environment that they're in? I mean, every child coming in the first day doesn't really want to be there. They would rather go back home. First day, the second day, a few tears. But what we need to do, and our role is to provide that emotionally safe environment where children feel happy to come back, and they do, and eventually, they skip back into the classroom, which means we've done what we promised. We've created an emotionally safe and comforting environment for children. I think another point that we mentioned in one of my sessions earlier as well was communication, and that communication is key. What we say to the children around us, how we say it, what tone of voice, what body language we use, what state of mind we're in when we say what we say does count, and children will they will respond to the situation they've been faced with, or the communication they've been having with a certain individual. Is that communication positive, which will yield positive results? Is the communication negative? Is it harsh? Are you even communicating or just talking over the child? Are you speaking with the child? Is there communication happening? And that it does matter. And the responses you receive after whatever kind of communication you've engaged in will say a lot about how you've communicated. If the communication is a two-way conversation where you're listening and you're taking in what the other person or the child is saying, you will probably and most definitely receive a positive result or positive communication back. If the communication you're using is maybe undermining, maybe in a tone of voice that feels where children may feel like they're being maybe feel scared, or they feel like they're being pinpointed. They may be feeling negative about a certain situation, and our communication has maybe supported that feeling, then the outcomes will be negative. Children will not feel secure in their environment, and they will react negatively to the communication that you've had with them. So please, before communicating with a child or speaking to a child, or be sure that we're not speaking at the child or over the child. We are with them. We are at their level communicating with them, because that is what will yield positive results and will enhance the child's emotional well-being. I think it's also important to understand that maybe one approach has been positive and real positive results from a certain child, but that same approach might not work for another child. It might not necessarily work for all of them. So getting to know each child in your class is important. Getting and changing your way of communication for each child according to how they will manage your communication is important too. So yes, get to know your children, come to their level, and interact with them where they will respond in the most positive way. You need to be able to ask and do things and say things differently, and what works best for each individual child. I do want to go through three important factors. I think 3 things that we all need to use to support emotional well-being of each child. I think the first one would be emotional intelligence, where there's ability to understand and use and manage where children can use their own emotions, manage their own emotions in a positive way to relieve any kind of stress or difficult situation they're going through, and enable them to communicate effectively, and to be able to empathize with others, and overcome any kind of challenges or conflicts they may be dealing with. And I think the best way to do that is to model the same kind of reaction, and teach children the best way to deal with a negative situation. So children do need to be emotionally intelligent, and the way they do that is by us modeling the correct kind of behavior responses, and children will pick up on those emotions and be able to regulate their behavior in a positive way. According to an American psychologist called Daniel Goleman, he's actually identified 5 types of emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness, where children will self-observe, they look at themselves and deal with certain situations by being aware of themselves. Self-regulation, where they're being able to manage their own emotions. Motivation, where they are motivating themselves. 4 is empathy, where they recognize the emotions of others. And 5th is social skills, where they're able to handle certain relationships. So there's 5 types of emotional intelligence that have been recognized here: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And all these can be gained through modeling behavior, through positive communication, and through positive interactions, and by providing children with an emotionally safe environment, as we mentioned earlier. The second is positive language or positive linguistics. I did speak about this in one of my sessions earlier as well, where we use positive language, as we know that would empower children to make appropriate choices on their own. That will in turn boost their self-confidence. It allows them to focus and learn from positive behaviors instead of focusing on the negative ones. Negative language, negative communication will often leave children feeling frustrated and confused, and that's not what we want. So I think the more positive language, the more positive communication we use, the more positive outcome we will receive and gain to support emotional well-being within children. Positive discipline is also it. That's the third one. So positive discipline, do we punish children? And I think the most common concept in many of the old nurseries or the old ways of dealing with behavior would be having a thinking corner, timeout, a thinking circle, pulling children away from a situation so they're alone to maybe think about what they've done. I think these actually do bring out the negative, a negative feeling within children. I think to deal with any kind of behavior, be it negative or positive, we need to use positive discipline measures. And it's a way of teaching and guiding children by letting them know what behavior is acceptable in a way that is firm but kind. So we do make them aware of what they're doing, and the fact that it's not right, or it's hurting somebody, or it's hurt somebody's feelings. But we do not punish them for that behavior. We make them aware of the consequences of their behavior on others or even on themselves. How did that make you feel when you saw your friend crying? How did that make you feel? How do you think your friend feels after you've done what, or said what you've done or said? So we need to make them aware of the situation around them. Taking them away from a situation just enhances negative feelings. We need to actually support children feeling a sense of belonging and significance. And positive discipline will support connections and actually develop some mutual respect between the adults and children within the classroom setting. So these are 3 things that we really need to focus on when we're trying to bring about emotional well-being within children. It's also important to understand the difference between emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence. So the EQ and the IQ. IQ is something that you all must have heard of lots and lots and lots. It's basically our cognitive capacity and the total amount of information that is actually stored in the brain. As some people would say that having abundance of knowledge is a main characteristic of being intelligent, which is the IQ. The more knowledge you have, the more intellectual you are. In other words, it's ability to think and reason. It's fixed, it's technical, and it looks at the what in life. So how much knowledge do you have? What's happening? And how much information do you have stored in your brain? That is the measure of your intellectual intelligence. And the opposition to that, or in side by side, even you can look at the emotional intelligence, where people would say that being able to express your emotions clearly and in a safe manner is actually part and is an intellectual trait. And it's our non-cognitive capacity. It looks at the how and the purpose in life. It looks at, and it's commonly referred to in early years as our soft skills. So ways of dealing with difficult situations. And it's linked to our awareness of the situation that we're facing. And it's something that can be learned. And it's something that's not based on the what in life. It's based on the how and how I'm going to manage a certain situation and the purpose of life. It measures an individual's ability to express, regulate, and understand theirs and others' emotions. And I think that's an important cue there. Is able to manage yourself and the others around you through your emotional intelligence. Whatever your level of IQ is, you can still build on your emotional intelligence. So if your intellectual intelligence is a certain number, because it is actually marked up in a number, that actually does not monitor or regulate the amount of emotional intelligence someone might have. So you can keep adding and keep supporting someone with their emotional intelligence. And that's what our aim is in the earlier setting, is to make every child emotionally sound. I think self-awareness is the first step to growing emotional intelligence. We need to support children to be more self-aware and to manage their emotions in an appropriate manner. There is a video here I'd like you to watch. Just check for time. 7:20. Will I be able to play this, Rafi?
I don't think so on this link.
No?
Okay, no. Let me try and play it from my side. Give me a second.
Okay. It's okay if we can't. We can play at the end, or I can send links across.
I think we should do that at the end. It's having a bit of...
Yeah, I think so. Not a problem. It's just a quick video on emotional intelligence. I do want to look at the tip of the iceberg concept here, again with reference to IQ and EQ. So emotional intelligence, we can see, is on the tip of the iceberg. It means that this something is only a small part of a much bigger situation. I think what we need to look at is the EQ, which we look at everything that's under the surface. And this idiom comes from the fact that only the tip can be seen, and the rest, the emotional IQ and emotional intelligence, which is much larger and is underneath the water, although cannot be seen, it is very, very, very important. So I think this is a good concept to use when providing information to your staff and for yourself, as well as a reminder that we might look at the IQ of a person or a child and determine whether the child is intellectual or not. Whereas what we do need to do is look at the bigger picture. We need to look at the emotional intelligence of each individual. How do they manage real life situations? How do they manage stressful situations? How are they being able, what are you doing to enable them to manage their emotions and their sense of well-being? And I think it's a really good analogy there that you can use and reuse in your trainings as well for your staff, so they understand the importance of emotional intelligence within an early year setting. As I mentioned, emotional intelligence can be learnt and it can be taught. We need the children to understand it, recognize it, and being able to manage their emotions. We need children to understand that emotions are just that, they're emotions, and it's okay to have emotions. What we need them to understand is how they manage those emotions is very important. A child may be frustrated, maybe angry, maybe upset with a situation, and that's okay. We recognize that that is a possibility. We do understand, and I think children need to understand that emotions are important to have. But I think the most important thing is for us as early years educators is to be able to support children in managing those emotions. A lot of the times, I mean, the main concept of this is having children back in the education system after being away for a very long time. And many children came with overwhelming emotions. They hadn't been out in play dates, they haven't been out to play centres as they used to do, malls like they used to do, being over to cousins' houses like they used to. And I think there's lots of painted up frustration and lots of questions with them being so young, not being able to ask. And that usually does get displayed in negative emotions or overwhelming emotions. And I think what we need to do as a team of early years educators is being able to support children in and making them aware that we do recognize these emotions and that it's okay to have these emotions, and also support them in having an understanding on how to manage the emotions as well. And as time goes on and the more we repeat our positive language, positive discipline, and our positive communication within a safe environment, we will be able to support children in expanding their emotional intelligence quite highly. Again, the same concept, emotions are just emotions. They can be positive, they can be negative. It doesn't make them good or bad. They're just real emotions, and we're okay to have emotions, but that makes us who we are. It's not what we feel that matters, it's what we do with those feelings that matters, and how we respond to them that makes a difference. Handling an emotion constructively. If a child is given the correct cues to handle their emotion constructively, they've actually been given the opportunity to become more resourceful and more creative. They become resilient. They become self-confident with stronger self-esteem. And the only way children can do this if the adults around them are emotionally intelligent. So everything I've spoken about this morning about how to support children becoming emotionally intelligent, that will not work until you yourselves are strong and emotionally intelligent. Being aware of handling your own emotions will support you in creating an environment where children are able to also handle their emotions. There is something that I often do say to my staff, and I think works all around when it comes to early years centres and classrooms, where we have loud and chaotic teachers, we most definitely have loud and chaotic children. If a teacher comes into a classroom angry, upset, maybe with something that's happened at home, maybe any home situation they're having to deal with, they will in fact pass those negative emotions across to children, and more or less children will then start showing negative behaviors. They'll be showing frustration. You might get a few more tears than usual because children are feeding off their role model or feeding off the emotions that are being surrounded that they've been surrounded by. So again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, is leaving your negative, your emotions, your stressful life. You may have, all of us have certain situations in our lives that we're having to deal with. Leave it at the door. Come in being emotionally well, and being in support of your own emotional well-being. And that will then support you in managing your class of children, even your support staff or your teachers around you, and even your management around you, because if you come in with a positive feel, you'll be able to pass that across to your children as well. I want to just talk a little bit about resilience here. I was quite interested, so I did Google a resilient child, and what I came up with was a quote here where a truly resilient child or adult is one who is able to manage their emotions when they're faced with any adversity, so they can keep working towards their goal. And I think that's really important, that we provide an environment for each other and for the children around us to be able to be resilient, because that will then support their emotional well-being and then will build on their emotional intelligence. Resilient children and or adults will start by facing their feelings about a situation, and they're able then to contain any disappointments or frustrations of anger, because they've been able to face their feelings. They've been made aware of their feelings, and then also being supported in how to handle those feelings. This gives them the opportunity to start thinking about the challenge, not as a dead end, but as a stumbling block that they can overcome, that they can push back and bounce right back. And I think that's really, really important for us as adults and for children within the setting, especially during this difficult time that we're all having to face. And children need and adults need the capacity to overcome quickly from difficulties and any toughness that they may be facing. Resilience is developed over time. It will not come immediately. And I think if we're persistent with our ways of managing and handling these situations, children will also be able to build on their resilience and become emotionally strong, building on their emotional well-being. Another video here for sure we can't watch. It's a good one, the Cookie Monster. So hopefully we can watch it at the end of the session. If not, I will be sending you the link so you can watch it in your own time. Emotionally intelligent, being emotionally angry is easy, but being emotional angry is easy. So having the trait of being angry, showing anger is fine, is easy, but being emotionally angry is something else. So I think we need to separate the two, anger and emotional anger. We need to be, if we're angry, we need to be angry with the right person, not just take out our frustrations and vent out our anger at the first person that comes along. We need to be angry at the right degree. Are we very angry, slightly angry? We need to be able to regulate. Our children should be able to regulate their degree of anger. They need to be angry at the right time, and not after or before a situation. It needs to be at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right way. But that will only come with self-awareness. And self-awareness we are teaching children through their emotional intelligence. So, it's fine. We all have feelings of anger. The children often have feelings of anger within the classroom, and you'll see them dealing with it in different ways. You may have a child who's angry, who would end up biting someone, throwing a toy across the classroom, scribbling across somebody's work, scribbling across the walls. These are all behaviors that we've all seen. And what we need to do is reel the children in to be able to be aware that they're angry, and then be able to go through these points of where they're being able to decide whether being angry to a certain extent is fine, and how to manage their angry feeling. Again, requiring self-awareness. Children, we need to be able to turn children's emotions around. We need to be able to speak to the child and figure out who they're really angry at. And again, those points, as I've mentioned, was that level of anger really required? Was that the right time to be angry? What was the child actually angry about, and what was the best way for them to deal with the feelings that they were having? So I think making children aware of the different emotions that they might have will then enable us to turn those emotions round and to bring out a positive outcome. Again, you would only be able to do this in a positive way and in a constructive way if you knew each child individually. And that's something that I mentioned very early on, is for us to understand each child as an individual, which will enable us to then deal with any emotions that they have in a way that they will best be able to respond to. As I mentioned, with resilience being a key component of emotional intelligence, one's ability to adapt positively, constructively, and being able to kind of bounce back from the adversity or risk they're having to face. Resilience is a really huge component of emotional intelligence. And I think if we work on self-awareness and resilience within the classroom, we're well in the way of creating emotionally intelligent children within our settings. As I've mentioned, yes, we can teach resilience. We can provide a positive framework to motivate children to develop resilience over time. So again, it's not something that will come immediately, but with repetition, with perseverance, and with modeling the correct behavior, we can have resilience as a learned response, and that can be built on and improved over time. Plan to develop strengths and bridge gaps. Even us as the best leaders, we cannot be good at absolutely everything. So now we've got a clear picture of who you are, and you've actually probably taken some time now during the session to reflect and learn about yourself, and the areas that maybe you as an educator would like to address moving forward. Are you leaving your situations behind, your issues behind? Are you dealing with the surrounding within your setting in a positive way? Are you using positive reinforcement, positive language? Have you created a safe, an emotionally safe environment for your children? So these are the questions I think you need to ask yourself from today's session. What can you do as an individual to build on your strengths to be able to pass those across to the children in your care? What gaps do you have, and how best do you think you can address them? If you have been given peer feedback, look at this. This is really important. If your colleagues have given you feedback on how you are addressing certain situations, or how you are supporting or maybe not supporting the children in your care, as when you look at this, it does allow you to stop doing things that you think help but actually don't. It does save you time when somebody does give you feedback. So it's always constructive feedback when colleagues do comment on your behaviors within the setting as early as educators. So do have a time to sit down today maybe and reflect on yourself as the role model of the class. Are you bringing about the traits and the intellectual and emotional traits that you'd like to see within the children in your care? Children, and just a reminder that children feel safe and secure when we take responsibility for our communication, when we communicate what we really want to say. We can choose how we want to say it. So we want to say it in a positive way, in a supportive way. We need to be able to communicate what we need and what we want to do in a positive way that will support children feeling safe and secure. We are in control of how we want to do it, and we can become aware of our vibes and how we resonate. So a lot of self-awareness within ourselves first before we move on to the well-being and emotional intelligence of the children within our settings. We want to be able to support ourselves first. We're all going through certain situations. Being able to put those to a side to be able to focus on the children in our care is the next step towards emotional intelligent children and adults within our setting. Transition back into nursery. Relationship can't thrive or survive without good communication. So look at your communication with the families that you have in your care. Get parents to fill in a one-page profile and get to know each child as an individual. If you've got a communication app, use it at its fullest. Lots of communication, get to know the family, get to know any situation the family might be going through, and how that is impacting on the child's emotional intelligence or emotional well-being in the classroom. Have welcome packs, maybe an electronic welcome pack, so they're aware of what you're doing within the setting to support children's well-being. Bringing the home into the nursery, getting to know the child's home environment is very important, because if you bring that home environment and understanding within your setting, you're creating, you're filling the gap and creating a bridge between home and school, and that's really, really important. Have visual routine charts for children and their parents so they're able to get into routine quicker. I think with children being at home through the pandemic time, there has been a lack of routine within their lifestyles. And I think coming back to an earlier setting, we need to support them in bringing back that routine and support them in bringing back that normality within their lives. And we play a huge role there. Get yourselves ready, get your inner dialogue on the right track now by making some strong personal affirmations. So you are, and say it to yourself, I am the guardianship of childhood. I am resilient. I am emotionally intelligent. I am confident. And if we say these to ourselves and we become who we need to become, we can then pass those traits on to the children in our care. Every day, do something that brings you joy. Use this time to research the kind of teacher you want to become. Keep up to date with the right news about what's happening in the world right now. And replace fear with knowledge. So if you're unsure of how to handle a situation, if the protocols and the regulations you're being faced with or having to follow are becoming a little bit difficult to manage, replace that fear with knowledge. Get to know how you can manage that situation in a positive way to support your children within the setting. What can you do to make it easier for yourself and for those around you? It hasn't been an easy time. I'm hoping things will get better soon. But, lots of self-reflection, lots of strong personal affirmations, very important to support your children within the classroom and their emotional needs. Always remember that we are the guardians of childhood. We are the role models, and we are those strong people that will guide children in the right direction towards creating individuals who are emotionally resilient, with lots of positive intellect and emotional intellect within them. Another one that will support you, just quickly, please stay hydrated. It does support your brain function, your body function, your emotions. Fasting today, I know, because I normally sip on water while I'm doing these sessions, not being able to do it, being a little bit draining. So water, keep yourself hydrated, keep yourself strong. Muscles, brain, blood, body, and cells all need water. Take a deep breath. You're doing a fantastic job. It hasn't been easy. It has been a difficult ride. I think as an early years leader, all of us leaders do acknowledge the difficulty you've had to face during this time. And I think as early years educators, I'm sure you acknowledge the difficulties we've had to face as leaders during this pandemic with the protocols, the regulations, and trying to keep parents and children well, safe, and in control of themselves and their emotions and their emotional well-being. So, yeah, fantastic job, guys, and keep it up. We've done really, really well. Just to sum up, always pause to think and process before you speak and act, because we are the role models, we are the guardians of the children in our care. So yeah, thank you for this morning. There are some additional materials and resources maybe Rafi can pass on to you all. They will be able to support you in reflecting on today's session. Let's come back on. It's working again. There I am again. Sorry, switched off. So yeah, thank you so much, Rafi. Thanks, guys, for being here this morning. I've really enjoyed the morning session. Should we check if we have any questions?
Actually, most of the questions are related to the certificates and resources. Yeah. So I checked during the session about the certificates and what has been dispersed as of yet. So based on the system, we have dispersed about, I think, 48% of the certificates. It's for some reason it's becoming a bit of a slow process to get them out, but they are being dispersed with the link and to the videos and the link to the resources. So I just urge everyone if they can be just a little bit more patient, and we will get all the certificates out as soon as possible.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rafi. I'm just going through the list. I think most of them are for yourself. I do have one here from Dee. How do you work with a 3-year-old child who repeatedly pushes and snatches things? I think, again, it's it's modeling the right kind of behavior. It's showing them the right way to do things, and how actually explain to them how they've made the other child feel when they have pushed or snatched, which will create some self-awareness within the child, and repeatedly they're revisiting the same kind of talk and the same kind of communication will eventually support children in realizing that what they're doing might be upsetting others around them. Get to know why they're pushing, what's the frustration behind the push and the snatches. Are they sleeping well? Are they eating well? Do they have something else that's going on with them where they're having to show such emotions? So get to know the child first, and then support them on modeling, by modeling the correct kind of behavior and making them aware of the consequences of their actions on others. That's really important. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-year and 5-month boy in my class. He never says a word emotionally. He's very happy to come to the nursery. First, we contact the parents and say he talks at home. What can be the problem? He never repeats anything after me. Okay, so lack of communication, not using communication, maybe not feeling safe. And so if there's communication going on at home, a lot of the time we just need to give children time to feel safe in the environment that they're in within the setting. I think then working towards their emotional, creating an emotionally safe environment for them. Lots of communication, the correct kind of communication, getting to know them as an individual, what are their likes and their dislikes, speak to the parents about what kind of activities the child likes to do at home, and maybe mirror those activities or bring those activities into the setting for the child to understand that you're just looking out for their best interests. And once they're feeling secure in their environments, the interaction will also start, maybe slowly, but it will eventually get there, especially if they are talking at home. It's just a matter of time while they're feeling a little bit disconnected or apprehensive. We need to turn that around so they're feeling emotionally secure in the surroundings that they're in. And then the rest is yours. Thank you, Nicola. Yep, Rafi, I think that's everything.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Shamila, and thank you everyone for attending. I hope the session was informative, and we will see you at the evening session or next week.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you so much.